Welcome to this short recap of the session Undergraduate Research Scholarship Scheme Effective Presentations. My name's Ian Turner and I work behind the scenes alongside colleagues you've already met, supporting the scheme and helping run the yearly conference. This year, the Undergraduate Research Scholarship Scheme Conference takes place on the 2nd of November. And hopefully after this short presentation, you can email the scheme's email address, which you can see on the screen in the bottom right, by the 12th of October to confirm that you wish to present your work in an oral presentation at that conference. And just a reminder, also at the same conference, we'll be asking you to present a poster of your work on the scheme, and the deadline for those to be submitted is the 19th of October at 12 o'clock via the same email address. So what is the Undergraduate Research Scholarship Scheme Conference? So what I'd like you to do now is to either type the following YouTube address or use your device to capture that QR code, or visit the YouTube link in the notes beneath this presentation and watch this short video in which some students who took place in the URSS conference of 2018 talk about the conference and its benefits. So now you've done and watched that short video, this talk is really trying to do a few things. Talk a little bit about delivering presentations and understanding your views on presentations, before moving on to talk about some of the tips for effectively delivering a presentation, particularly in the context of this URSS conference, before finally thinking about the visual aids that you will use, i.e. your PowerPoint presentations, to convey your message. Okay, so we're going to start off with a short exercise, and for this exercise I'd like you to once again pause this recording and either visit this YouTube, type this YouTube link, scan the QR code, or visit the YouTube link which you can see in the notes beneath the video. And when you go there, you'll see you're halfway through a presentation, an academic presentation. I'd like you to watch it for roughly 2.5 minutes till you get to 46:35 on the little time clock that comes back. Once you've watched that video, I'd like you to think about some of the positive aspects you saw in that presentation, some of the things you thought were good, and then perhaps some of the things that require development, just the things that you'd personally like to see improved. And the purpose of this exercise was getting you to reflect on your own experience of being in the audience for presentations as a vehicle for thinking about how you may deliver your own presentations. In the face-to-face session, students captured a whole range of thoughts in both sides of those columns, reflecting their views on this talk. And there was no real consensus, which is really an important point. As someone who's had the luxury of delivering hundreds and hundreds of presentations over the time, there are no hard and fast rules about what you should do when. In fact, most guidance on effective presentations is very generic, and it's important you understand the context and the frame in which you're delivering your talk in order to make it most effective. However, I have looked at a lot of resources and guides that talk about effective presentations, particularly those that focus on short talks like those in the URSS presentation. So particularly talks like the TED Talk series, which are delivered by excellent charismatic personalities and really engaging and high profile. And from these kind of resources, I've drawn out 5 key points that I think may be relevant to you. The first thing is that your URSS talk should begin with a clear statement. And by that I mean a clear articulation of what it is you're going to talk about. What is the purpose of this talk? What would you hope the audience to gain by the time they've finished listening to you speak? You may be thinking, well, I don't know. What is it I want to talk about? Probably the easiest place to start here is to look back at your aim or your objectives of your study and think about what it was that you wanted to discover, understand, explore when you started this project. If you feel that that's changed dramatically since you started the project, you could do it the other way around. Instead, you can look at your kind of key conclusions or your discussion points and then work backwards. Basically, you want people to get to the point where they understand these final points that you're going to make in your presentation. The second thing that these resources tell me is about key points. So making sure that the points that you make in your presentation all link back to this clear statement, or put in a more polite way, don't divert off on tangents and talk about things that aren't relevant to this key point. Perhaps the easiest way to explain this is something like the methods in your project, which I imagine are quite complex and include lots of parts. And perhaps you could probably talk about them for the whole talk if needed. But the audience probably don't need to know the finer nuances of your methodology. They just need to understand the broad principles of what you did in this study, and then you can move on to talk about other aspects. So making sure that you only give information that is essential for the audience to understand those kind of that key takeaway message that you want them to have. The third thing that they talk about is being concise. So making sure that you don't waffle off in your text, include additional detail that's not needed, and more importantly, being yourself in how you speak. I mean, this is an academic conference, you know, with your fellow students and academic staff, but you don't need to put in additional words or explanations in order to, you know, meet this an audience expectation. Be clear and precise and say what needs to be said and nothing more. The next thing is about the narrative or the story, and making sure that not only does the points that you make link back to this overall statement, but that each kind of slide or idea links to one another. There's a nice flow through this talk that helps the audience follow and understand how things are progressing. And the final thing that these resources say is about being clear, making sure you clearly communicate in terms of your voice, but also your body language, and that the voice and body language are just as important to your presentation as the PowerPoint slides themselves. So these resources talk about these 5 things. So knowing what you want to deliver, the principle to what you deliver, is one thing. The next step is making sure you're adequately prepared. And I'd say there's 2 things you need to do in order to be adequately prepared. One is understanding the audience. So I can tell you, and you maybe saw it in the little video at the beginning, that your audience is made up of your fellow URSS students, who should all be there, some other students who may elect to come, your supervisors, hopefully, and perhaps some other academic staff. So a mixture of people. And the reason you need to understand the audience is knowing what level to pitch your talk at. So I'd say you should pitch your talk at, in this URSS conference, to a student who's, you know, in your halls of residence or in your house, or you met on the bus or a coffee shop. So they understand the, you know, higher education, they understand research or higher education, but critically, they're not in your subject. So they're not from your discipline or area. So, you know, you're a psychology URSS student, you're talking to an engineering student. And if you're an engineering URSS student, you're focusing on a history student. And this helps you understand the level of kind of fundamental information you need to include in your talk so that everybody can understand what you're talking about. The next thing is time. How long do I have to talk? And this helps obviously structure your talk. And I can tell you that you have 10 minutes for talking and 5 minutes for question and answers in most cases, though there may be the opportunity for a slightly longer talk if needed. The final task that was in this thing is to look at some PowerPoint slides. So I'd like you to independently look at these 2 PowerPoint slides, one on the left and then one on the right, and think about some positive aspects of these PowerPoint slides and perhaps some areas of development for these PowerPoint slides. And use these to reflect on how you will construct your own PowerPoint slides. In terms of producing PowerPoint slides, once again, there are lots of guides online on these, and they say often conflating and contradictory things about how much you should use in terms of text and objects. I think common sense applies here. One thing for the URSS conference is that you need to remember that these slides are only being used to present. They're not being uploaded onto something like course resources and students need them to revise from. So you don't need to include full detail. You're trying to create that story to link to your key points for your audience, and provide you with the necessary aide-memoire in order to present your talk. Most of these guides say that slides need two things, which are text and objects. So in terms of text, some people say that you should have a few bullet points, some say no more than 7, some say no more than 5 sentences. I don't think it really matters, but always remember that concise point. Am I saying the minimum I need to on the slide, and do the words make enough sense on their own that someone just glance at the slides and can't hear what I'm saying, that they can understand and follow the message? Objects do really enhance slides. Perhaps you found this in your own reflection on the slides on the previous area, that the addition of an image or a movie or a sound file, adds value to the slides. It responds to different kind of ways of stimulation, text, visual, the oral, hearing you speak. In terms of images, there are kind of two types of images you see in presentations normally. Kind of integral ones, which are pictures actually related to your study, like pictures of your data or your setup and things, and kind of superfluous ones. So perhaps you're talking about diets and you have a picture of some food, nothing to do with your actual study, but kind of breaks up the text and helps people create a mind's eye picture of the kind of areas you're talking about. One thing that's clear in these guides is that the use of transitions, i.e. things that bounce in and drop down, on slides, and how the slides move from one slide to another, can be a massive distraction, not only to you as a presenter in trying to get your clicks right, but also the audience. Finally, also consider the accessibility needs of the audience. Lots of very good guides online on creating accessible presentations in terms of font style, image sizes, alternate text, and colour contrasts. One thing that always concerns student presenters, particularly at the URSS conference, is the idea of having questions. So there's a 5-minute Q&A session at the very end. And they're really nothing to worry about. As I mentioned before, I've done lots of presentations over my time, and here's 8 quick points about ways to help you respond to questions. Firstly, when asked a question, make sure you don't respond directly to the questioner. Look at the whole audience as you answer the question. This is obviously not a one-to-one, interaction. You're speaking to the whole audience. Make them feel part of your answer. 2, if you're not sure what the question has asked you, academics specifically can really waffle on when they give a question. Just clarify. Ask them, what did you mean there? Ask them to shorten the question down. Don't get confused by the length of their answer. Thirdly, it's absolutely fine to say, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. It happens to me frequently that I'm not sure of the answer. You can say, I don't know the answer to that one, but thank you for asking the question. It's something that I would like to explore. You can thank them for showing you a gap in your current knowledge base. One really good tactic is to repeat the question. Not only from an accessibility perspective, often the entire lecture there can't hear the question because the speaker's speaking away from them down to you. So speaking the question back to the audience is often very useful. Also, by repeating the question, it gives you those few minutes or seconds, just to think about what you're going to answer. Don't give open answers to your question. So don't finish the end of your kind of answer to the question by saying something like, did that answer your question? Or is that okay? Because what you're doing then is giving the person who asked the question an opportunity to say something else and perhaps even ask a further question. And you probably don't want that in the true spirit of engaging the whole audience. So finish with a full stop. Next, remember you are the expert. You're the person who knows the most about this subject in the room. So if someone questions an aspect of your study and you're confident with the way you've said it, no need to start to tread water and say, well, I'm not sure. Be confident. You're the expert in this study. Obviously, you can practice questions. You could do that amongst your fellow students, your fellow URSS students, and give each other ideas of the kind of things you can ask. But common questions for these kind of talks are things like, what would you do if you could extend this study further? What does this study mean in the bigger picture? What's the wider context of your study? Those kind of questions. And the final step is to breathe. So after the question's been asked, feel free to take a few seconds to breathe and think about your answer. No one is expecting an immediate answer. Finally, here are some very useful links, QR coded and web links to resources that the library offers, both in general presentation skills and specific aspects of presenting at conferences, things like coping with nerves. And the links will once again be in the videos at the end. Finally, just some further opportunities offered in the conference this year, including poster drop-ins and presentation drop-ins, where you have the opportunity to kind of share your slides, explore the kind of things you'd like to talk about in your talk. Just to finish, a final reminder of those key dates and emails addresses for speaking. Look forward to hearing you speak at the conference.